A lot of talk about the Labor Party needing to change its leaders, but it's actually the wrong conversation to have. The real fact of the matter is the Labor Party simply has to change. Anthony Albanese obviously hasn't set the world on fire as leader, but he hasn't actually stuffed much up either. And he hasn't had much of a chance to set the world on fire. The world's been setting itself on fire. And even his old factional nemesis, John Della Bosca, who's a guru of the New South Wales right, and someone I think is very, very smart and been on the right track and helped deliver his mate Bob Carr more than a decade in power. I think the longest serving New South Wales Premier ever. Even he has said, what is the rationale behind changing leaders? Now, I know a lot of people who think that Albo has to go. I sympathise with that view, if you like, but what is the point? What would you replace him with? Would you replace him with another new, fresh, young leader who is odds on to lose? Because I think every single coronavirus prime minister or premier will win if they've handled it well. So we saw across the Dutch, Jacinda Ardern get a thumping majority. We saw Anna Palaszczuk get a thumping majority. Mark McGowan is on 90% approval rating, stratospheric stuff we've never heard of before. Even Dan Andrews with the massive stuff-ups in hotel quarantine and contact tracing, even his approval rating is still way, way, way higher, multiple times that of the opposition down there in Victoria. Whoever goes up against Scott Morrison, probably later this year, is going to have a gargantuan task on their hands. And why not make it Anthony Albanese, who's a safe pair of hands? The electorate knows him, even if they might prefer Scott Morrison or might want, someone that's already been in charge to keep going. They're not going to get spooked by Albo, and they might indeed decide that he is the best person to take the next phase, the rebuilding phase. The real problem is that they're losing, I suppose, credibility as a party of government, largely because they haven't been in government for so long. And when they were in government, they tremendously stuffed things up. They got tangled up in green left issues and lost sight of mainstream, middle Australia, working class Australia, and they've never really got out of the quagmire ever since. And what's happened is that in that absence, the coalition has actually crept in. So we've seen Scott Morrison actually rolling out this absolute textbook Keynesian Labor-style economic stimulus package, literally the government handing over money to workers. It's not that Scott Morrison particularly wanted to do it. Indeed, he had to be sort of dragged to the position by Labor figures. He's going to do the same thing on raising the job seeker rate altogether. There will be an increase in the dole. And again, where has that come from? Well, it's come from pressure from people like John Howard and Barnaby Joyce and business groups. And so once more, Labor has almost missed out on what should be a quintessential kind of Labor for the battler, for people who are down on their luck kind of story. Likewise, with climate change, Scott Morrison now looks like he's going to accept a 2050 zero emissions target, which will be exactly the same as Labor's. And somehow he's done it without the sky falling in, and he should be under more threat over a position like that from his base than Labor should be, because he's a pragmatist, because he believes in nothing. He's not going to die on a hill fighting, climate science, if you like, to appease his base, when he knows that will turn off the electorate, or if the rest of the world will leave him behind. And again, he's not going to die on a hill of neoliberalism and not put in any stimulus, even if that might be what he believes in or what the economic rationalists in his party believe in, because he knows that this is either a job that needs to be done or something that will make him popular and electable. All this talk about leadership changes, you're really just talking about the cherry and not the cake. What Labor needs to do is have a complete shift back to the centre, back to mainstream middle class and working class Australia, start talking about bread and butter issues. Don't get tangled up in hypothetical climate change targets, because they're all hypothetical unless you win government, and you're not going to win government while you're talking about that instead of other real issues. Talk about, working people's targets and aspirations for next week, not global talk fests aspirations for 2030 or 2050.